Hi everybody, and welcome back to Sew Along with Jan and part 4 of the May Kimberbell Mini Quilt. So in this video we're going to be putting our little mini quilt together, putting the backing on, and then doing the binding. And doing the little sleeve on the back to hang it with. So I wanted to go through the stuff that we have to put this together. So we've got all of our little blocks here, and they're all trimmed and ready to go. So here's all of the blocks we prepared in the last videos. I need some binding. In the instructions it calls for 2.5 inch binding, but I have 2.25 inch binding. So whichever is best for you, fold it, do the little seam and seam your pieces together. I had some yardage, so I've just got a couple of widths of fabric here. And go ahead and fold it in half so you're ready for your binding. And then I do a sleeve. So the sleeve is different. It's not in the instructions. So I cut a piece of fabric that is 6 inches wide and 12 inches long. And then what I do is on one side, and you can probably see it here that it's kind of narrower at the top here. Okay, so I make a mark about 1/2 inch from each edge, and then I trim it I put my rotary ruler on here and then to the edge, so that the top part is going to be 11 inches and the bottom is 12. So then I'm going to take 1/2 inch and then 1/2 inch again seam, and I will do a little hem in there before we go to put it on. But that's going to be sorry, my cat decided to come visit me and she bumped the camera. So then we will put this on the back, and with a piece of Heat and Bond Ultra. So I didn't get my package out, so I'll get that out. But then we'll fold this in half like this, and then this will be the little sleeve we'll put on the back of the quilt to hang it on our little hanger. So, okay, so that's the things we need. Oh, and then we need the backing. So the backing is 14 by 14. I matched my my sleeve to the backing here. And I put a piece of Shape Flex on the wrong side of the backing because it keeps it from wrinkling so much when you stitch in the ditch, because we're going to be stitching in the ditch between the blocks. And when I did this without the Shape Flex, it always got very wrinkly looking, and I didn't care for the looks of the back. This makes it much smoother. So I put a piece of Shape Flex on the back of my 14 by 14 backing. All right, so we got all of our little pieces here. I'll lay these over here. And then my Heat and Bond Ultra, let me see if I can reach it behind me here. I forgot to pull it out of my drawer. Here's my Heat and Bond Ultra. So we're going to do a piece, this is the Ultra Hold in the red package. So we're going to do a piece that's about 3/4 to an inch wide. And then it's going to need to fit in between the little hems on our sleeve. So it's going to be probably 10 inches longer. So I usually cut it about 11 inches long, and then I just trim it off a little bit on the edges so when I go to put it on. But I'll show you that here in a little bit too. So get that ready also. And then we'll need our little embellishments. There's these little pom-poms that are going to be part of the flowers on the flower block. So on these little stems right here, we're going to put some little pom-poms on there. So that'll be really cute. All right, so we got all of our little pieces here. So let's get started with the sewing part. We're going to start out, we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam. And so I like on my machine, I'll show you here, I like to go over to the Q tab, and I'm going to use my J foot, and I'm going to use my Q02 stitch. And that's the 1/4 inch piecing stitch. So it moves them, if you can see, it's kind of moved my needle over towards the right so that I can run my fabric right along the outside edge of my foot over here. Okay. All right. So it says in the book, we're on page 14 in the book. Let me get this out of our way for a minute. We're going to sew our little blocks together first. So we're going to start by sewing together block 1 and 2, which are these two. I want to make sure I get my butterfly right side up. You can kind of see my butterfly there, so we'll make sure we get that right side up. And then we're going to sew it together to another block. So we're going to do these two first. Oh, and then the little striped ones. So we're going to do these two. Make sure we get it right side up here. We're going to do our 1/4 inch seam. Move my book over to the other side. With Q02, I've just got a regular number 11 needle and I've got like some Pima cotton thread in the machine and in the bobbin. So I think I'm using, this is white for this. Most of these fabrics are pretty light colored, so I thought the white would be okay to sew it together with. Something neutral is always good to piece things together with. So we're going to do our 1/4 inch seam. Just going to tie it off at the other end here. And then we're going to take these two and put them onto the, so there's our first two. And we're going to put these onto the welcome block, so that kind of you are welcome as the. So what I want to do first though is I would tell you to do the pressing as you go. And I'm going to go press these open. In fact, I might just stitch together the other two blocks because the next step is going to be the other two small blocks. So then I can press both of them at the same time. So let's get our 3rd and 4th blocks together because we're going to put those on the other one. I just want to make sure I got everything right side up. So here's our little loops. This is the loops quilting design, and then here's another butterfly. So we want to make sure those are right side up. So I'm going to put these two together too. And then we'll put these on that orange block that says as flowers in May. So we'll do that. So let's do these first, and then I can get up and iron once, and then we'll sew to these two little blocks. So you just have to kind of look at the instructions, kind of walks you through the order that they do this. So sometimes you have to kind of get it, you know, in a certain order so that everything lays nice and flat. And I'm going to trim, or I'm going to press my seams open. All right, so there's the second two blocks. So I'm going to go press these seams open real quick, and then we're going to sew this section to this block, and then this section to the orange block like this before we sew them together. So give me just a moment. I'm going to go do some pressing. Okay, so I got these pressed, and remember, press your seams open. They lay flatter when you go to put the backing on and everything, so I always like to open mine up when I press them. And we're going to do the top two are going to go on this block. So put these over here. So we're going to turn these right sides together here. I'm going to put a couple of pins in this so that my little seams won't pop up on me. Put a couple pins in here. And then the other one is going to be the bottom one, the Flowers in May block. We're going to have the purple block first and then this one. So this will go like this. Because all the little blocks go together on the right hand side here. So we'll do this one also so we can stitch both of these, and then I'll press these before we put them together. So then we're going to put these together. These will be on the right hand side, and then the bigger block with the flowers goes on the left, and then the bigger long skinny block goes at the bottom. All right, so we'll get these on. If I can get them lined up. It's kind of a dreary, rainy day here in Iowa today. I had to drive up and have my car serviced. It was not a very nice day to be out driving around. It was very, very rainy and cold, windy. Okay, so we're going to go slowly over the pins. I'm going to tie off at the end here. And then we're going to do the other side. And then I'll press these open. This one shouldn't take too long to put together. There weren't too many blocks in it. Just have to kind of put them together in the right order. Some of the big bench pillows, boy, some of those you really have to be careful to get, you know, carefully put together in the order. I did a couple of the quilts too, and you got to kind of make sure you're really paying attention to the order you're putting them in, and you get all the blocks in the right place. All right. We'll tie off on this end, and then I'm going to go press these two open, and then we'll put them together, hopefully with the words in the right order. All right, so we'll put these in here. And again, open your seams up when you do the pressing. So we're going to press these open and press this open, and then we'll put these two sets together. Okay, so I got these all pressed open, and then we're going to put the "You are as welcome as the," and then "Flowers in May" goes underneath, and then all four of these will be on the right hand side. So we'll go ahead and put these together. We're going to get our little seams lined up here so that our little blocks will be all nice and lined up. Put a couple pins in here if I can get a hold of it. So today's a good day for sitting inside and sewing with my friends. It was just not a very nice day for being out running around, but I did have to get the car service, so I got that done. Oh goodness, it's really raining now. It kind of sprinkled on me all the time, but it didn't really rain hard, but now it's raining kind of hard. I can hear it. So, all right, so now we're going to do this one. Get this one all lined up. Having a little trouble getting this part lined up for some reason. There we go. I'm going to put a pin at the end here. It's being contrary today. Okay. Get that. Then we'll do these, and then we'll press the seam, and then we'll be ready to put, I think the next step is actually the flower block. Let's see. Yeah, the next one we'll put the flower block on the other side. So we may not press until we do that. Make sure we got it all done. Yeah. Then we'll tie off at the other end here. And then we'll put the flower block on the other side. So then we can press those two. Oops, here. All right, so let's do that. So these go together like this. Like that. Got a little pucker in there. I think it'll press out though. Okay, like that. And then we're going to do, actually I'm going to have to do, yeah, I'm going to have to press because see this needs to be pressed nice and flat for me to put the next block on. So yep, this one had a seam across the middle too. So we'll do that first, and then I'll put we'll get ready for the flower block here, and we're going to put this block on this side like that, and that's the whole top of the little quilt. Okay, so I've laid my little flower block. I got these all nice and pressed, and then I laid my flower block right sides together on the left hand side of my word blocks, and now we're going to sew this one together. It's like I got to get my camera adjusted a little bit. It's hard for I keep touching it with my elbow. And then we'll do this seam, press again, and then we'll be ready to put that last block on. It doesn't take too long to do these once you get going. This one had less blocks than some of them did. The last one had quite a few blocks in it. But they're turning out so cute. These have been really fun. The next half of the year, the CD is supposed to be coming out, I think, in May. I don't have them yet, so I'm going to have to get them as soon as I can get them. So hopefully I'll be able to stay on my schedule of a month ahead, you know. So, all right, so here's our blocks here. And then I'm going to press the seam open, and then there's our little flower block. So that's going to be really cute, and then the long skinny one will go on the bottom. So we're just about done. This will be on the bottom. So let me go press again, and now be careful when you're pressing on this block. Remember we got that vinyl on there, so just be very careful that you keep the iron off of it. We will be pressing mostly from the back, so it'll be okay, but just be careful because that will still melt, just so you know. I've learned that the hard way, unfortunately. So I'll be right back, and then we'll put our last block on. Okay, so I got that seam all opened up on the back. I was very careful with my vinyl, and now we're ready for the last block. So we just got to get this lined up here. And well, hopefully we get it right side up, and all the words are right side up, so that was a good thing. So we'll make sure we get this one right side. This goes this way. Okay. I always check. I have a tendency to put things on upside down, and then I have to rip. Done that lots of times. All right, let's get this one on. I'm going to try to put a little pin on those seams just to hold them from flipping over on me. Go down here. Now you are going to sew through a little bit of that vinyl, just so you know. It's going to be a little stiff down there. So there's a little bit of vinyl that we're going to be sewing through. Go ahead and get this. And then I think that's the last block, and then we're gonna be ready to put the backing on. So it doesn't take long to put these together. These are really fun. All right, let's get this sewn on. Whoops, move my book out of the way here. The cat decided she needed to help me this afternoon, so she's sitting in the middle of all the blocks and everything over here. That's the only time she wants to be friendly, is when I'm, you know, in the middle of doing something. I think most cats are like that, though, that they like to help you. Sounds like I need a new needle. I'll get a new needle here in a minute. All right, let's see here. Now be careful of that plastic coming up. That vinyl's a little bit scoochy, so that make sure that you get your block lined up, because it's kind of trying to scoot on me a little bit. Should have put another pin in there, I think. All right, let's take that out, and then we'll tie off at the end, and then we'll press this. Now, again, be very careful when you're pressing where that vinyl is, because you're going to have to kind of press on the back of the vinyl, so just be careful. In fact, this one, well, I like to open them up, so I may still open it up. But then we're going to press this down here, and then we're ready to put our backing on. But be very careful over here that you don't melt your vinyl, because you will have to press a little bit on that area. So since you're pressing from the back, it should be okay, but just be very careful. So I was going to show you what I did. I did open these all up the seam, but then when I got to where that vinyl was, I decided I didn't know if it would, I didn't want to iron right on that. So I snipped the seam on either side of the vinyl bottle and then just pressed it down really well on both sides. And that seemed to work really well. And then it looks nice on the front yet. So there's that. And then I didn't take the possibility of, you know, melting my vinyl. So I think that looks good. So I just snipped the little seam on either side of the little bottle where the vinyl came down into the seam. All right, so now we got to put our backing on. So the backing is already prepared with my shape blocks. So I'm going to put the backing, and I'm going to do this mostly on my table, but I want to show you how I get this started. I'm going to take my backing and lay it right side down on it's going to be on the ironing table, but I'll show you here just to get started. And then I'm going to put my little quilt in the middle of it. Just try to line it up as best I can, because you should have about an inch or so all the way around. They gave you a little bit of extra, okay? And smooth it out so it's nice and flat. And then I'm going to be taking basting pins. So I'm going to baste these with my safety pins. Somebody was telling me about a new basting pin the other day that comes apart, or like you can get them, they have some sort of a special spring on the top or something. I'll have to see if I can find those. That sounded really interesting. I do a lot of basting, and sometimes it's hard to get them open. So then I'm going to take, and I'm going to kind of start in the middle, and I'm just going to take my pins and put a couple pins in each block like this. And I'm just going to, and don't put your pins through any of your embroidery to pin it together, because then we're going to stitch in the ditch through these seams, okay? So I'm going to do this over on my cutting table so that everything is nice and flat. It's a little hard to do it here because I can't leave things flat, but I'm just going to pin baste these and try to keep the pins away from the seams so that you don't have to move them so much while we're doing the stitch in the ditch. So I usually kind of move them in a little bit away from my seams so I don't have to move them. Okay, so we're just going to pin baste now the back to the little quilt. Okay, so I've got my little quilt all pin basted to the backing. Okay, and I have switched over from my Pima cotton thread to the Metler Transpill monofilament thread. So I like to do the stitching in the ditch with the monofilament so that it doesn't really show. And so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a different stitch. So we've been using Q02, and I'm going to use Q01 now, which is going to be the straight stitch in the center. And then I want the length to be about 3, because the length, it's going to be, we're going to be going through several layers. So I'm going to go ahead and move this up to 3 for the stitching in the ditch here. Okay, so let's see if we can get this done. This part goes pretty quickly. Had to get my glasses out because it's all clear thread. So now I like to use my J-foot because it has that little notch in the middle of the foot that helps me stitch in the ditch. There's stitch in the ditch feet. There's all kinds of different feet. So you use whatever works the best for you. This has always been my easiest way to do this. So I think I'm going to start, let's start in the center here and go this way first, because I like to kind of start in the center and work my way out. So I'm going to go ahead and put that little notch right on my ditch and tie it off. Again, I got that monofilament thread in here. So hopefully you can see okay. And I'm just going to look at my little notch and I'm going to run it right up the middle of that seam. We'll do this one first. But using that little bit longer stitch really helps a lot when you're doing this, because then it's not so, it doesn't take as many stitches. We are going through several layers. So we'll go out to the edge here and we'll tie off on the edge and cut. And then let's see, where do I want to go next? I think I want to go, so we went this one, so let's do this one here. We'll start down here by the big block. Second, I got to get this little tail out of here so I won't sew it into something. And we'll start down here and go this way. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line my little notch right up on my ditch, tie it off, and then we'll go up this way. And then I think we need to do a couple of these little ones, and then we'll do this long one too. But this really helps me to use monofilament when I do this, because it doesn't show, and so if you get just a little off and it goes onto the fabric, you really won't see it much. So I usually use monofilament for stitching in the ditch. And then we'll tie off up here. Okay, and then let's get those little short ones here. We need to do these 2 little short ones. We did this one, but we need these 2 yet. So let's get this one. And do we need to do this one yet? Yeah, this one here too. I might do that one first, actually. So we did this, and let's go this way. Start down here and go this way. And then we'll do these little ones. I kind of work my way out, so try to do, kind of start in the center and work your way out. Okay, we'll go up this way. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. It just, whichever works for you, kind of, but like I said, kind of work from your inside out so that you are, you won't get puckers in the middle. It's better not to start on the outside and work in. Okay. So we'll work to the outside from the inside. Okay, so I'm going to tie off here. And then we'll do those little ones. Let's do these 2 little ones here. See if I can get it lined up. For some reason, the cat thinks she needs to sit on my lap while I'm doing this. I don't know why. She probably hears me talking. She doesn't hear very well. My cat is nearly deaf, so she doesn't hear very well. And so it always makes me wonder if she can hear me talk a little bit, because when I start doing videos, she likes to come and sit on my lap. Or she thinks it's time for supper, and she wants to be fed. One of the two. It's getting close though. It's not quite that time yet, but getting close. Okay, so let's get this one all lined up here. Tie it off. Work our way out here. Okay, I'm going to tie off there, and then I think we just got the long one left. I think I got them all. We'll check up here to make sure we got them all. So we got these, yep, got these 4 little ones, yep, and then got this one. Got this one. So I think we just got this long one left. So we'll do this. Now, again, we're going to be sewing kind of through that vinyl. So it's going to be a little tricky. I think I'm going to turn it this way. I think it might be easier for me to do it this way, so we're going to try this way. So just be careful when you get up to your vinyl, because you kind of have to sew through it. I did leave the seam down, you know, pointed down because it was so stiff. I didn't figure it would work very well to open it up. So when you get up there, you're going to be kind of sewing through the vinyl. Okay, so we're getting close here. I'm going to make sure that I can see where my little seam is here. The rest of it's all open, so it makes it a little easier, but I didn't think that was going to open well because of the vinyl. It was so stiff, so I'm just going to try to be very careful along there. And then this will be a little easier. There we go. Okay, and then we'll tie off on the end. I think we got them all. We can tell from when we look on the back. Let's look on the back. I think we got them all. All right. Oh yeah, that looks good. So here's all of our little blocks here. And then what I like to do at the end, and you can see because I didn't, because I put the shape flex on, you can see that the backing doesn't look all wrinkly when you're stitching through it. So I do like the shape flex, really helps a lot. So then what we're going to do is we're going to leave the needle in the center, and we're going to sew around the outside edge of the little quilt, and about 1/8 of an inch in. So there's another notch on this foot that's over here towards the right and like along the edge of the zigzag. And that, if I put that along the edge of my fabric, that will give me approximately 1/8 inch seam with the needle in the center. So I'm just going to kind of put that right along there. And then we're just going to stitch all the way around the outside edge. Just kind of hold everything together so that when we get ready to do our, oops, I think I unthreaded my needle. Let's see. Yep, I did. Where did the thread go? It's very hard to see if you unthread your needle. I think I got this though. Yeah, this was okay. It just unthreaded when it cut evidently. So let's get this rethreaded. Now let's see if the thread will actually thread. So with monofilament, my machine does thread it with the needle threader sometimes. So let's see if it threads this time. Otherwise, that's why I always have my glasses on when I work with this, because I can't see to thread this stuff. It's not going in, but this thread is kind of stiff, and so it's harder to thread the machine with it. I've also found that it lays down better than it stands up. So I always lay it down on the regular spool pin. But it is a little on the stiff side, so you kind of have to pull on it a little bit to give it some tension so it goes through all of the little areas. All right, let's see if it'll thread for me this time. It did last time, but sometimes it only threads once and then that's it. Nope, not going to thread this time. I usually get lucky once, but the rest of the times I have to thread it myself. That's okay. We can do that. That's why I get my glasses on, because then I can see the edge of I can see it. But don't be surprised if your monofilament doesn't thread, because it's very stiff, you know, and mine just rarely threads. So, and some monofilament, like this is less stiff than some of them are, this Mettler Transfill, but they often just they don't work well with the needle threaders. So I often have to thread it myself. All right, so let's get this started. And we're just going to do about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. I just want to hold this together so that when I go to put the binding on, things aren't popping up on me to put the binding on. So we'll be working on that next. Oops, got a little carried away, didn't I? Let's take a stitch back there. All right, there we go. Careful of your pins. Well, you don't want to hit one of those pins, let me tell you. I'm very careful with those safety pins. Don't want to hit one of those. If you do, I think you'll be visiting the sewing machine doctor, because those are really stiff pins. All right, so I'm doing my 1/8 of an inch. careful of this pin here so I don't hit it. I think I can get just barely over it. There we go. That one was a little close. Around here. Okay. So this will really help with the binding. So the next step will be the binding. These do go together pretty well. Not too hard to do. Don't have too many pieces usually. But I really like the little sleeve on the back. So I kind of added the little sleeve because I thought it would be easier to hang it than instead of like putting like little tabs or something on. I like the sleeves. So the sleeves are easy to make. All right, we'll turn this over. And one last little, I have to go like right here. I'm not being very straight on this one. That's okay. As long as it's within my 1/4 inch. There we go. Okay, so we're going to tie this off, and we got all the way around. Now the next step then will be to remove the pins. And oops, I don't think I cut here. The other thing, my machine doesn't always like to cut I did cut it. Yeah, I cut it. It doesn't like to cut monofilament too well. It is kind of, you know, stretchy, so. Okay, so then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove all the pins, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to trim my backing right up to the edge of my little quilt so that I'm ready to put the binding on. So that's the next step. We'll be putting on our binding. So I'll be right back after I do a little bit of pressing and also trim down right to the edge of my little quilt here. Okay, so I've trimmed the edges of my little quilt, and they're all beautiful, and here's the nice back. Looks like I got some strings on the back though. And then we're going to put the first thing we're going to do is put our little, here's our little sleeve. So what I did, you know, I hemmed the edges, and I turned it up about 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch, and I trimmed, remember, the one side down to about 11 inches on one side, and then it was 12 on the other. So now when they lay flat, see the seams basically, like the little hems, kind of lay flat against each other. So I found the middle. The skinnier side's going to go against the back of the quilt, so that's where I put my Heat and Bond Ultra. So there's a strip here. The paper's still on it. I like to do, I like to do the pressing of this down after I'm done with the binding, just in case something gets pulled too tight or something. So I always do that last. So we're going to turn this over, and we're going to put this at the top with the raw edges together. So here's the raw edges that I folded, and we're going to put this together. So we know where the center of this is because we have a center block here. So I'm going to go ahead and just line up my center here, and I'm put a pin in the center of the little sleeves. So, and I've got the Heat and Bond is down right there, and this is the skinny sides down against the back. So then we're just going to put a couple of pins in here so we hold this all together, and then we're going to be putting our binding on. So that's the next step. I switched over in my machine to the back to my Pima cotton thread to put the binding on with. I think I'm going to have to go back to monofilament though to do the zigzagging. Now I'm going to do this binding with the machine. So depending on how you like to do binding, if you are doing binding that you're going to stitch down, you're going to put it on the front of the quilt. And in my case, I'm going to be putting it on the back because I'm going to machine stitch mine down. So we're going to put the binding on the back here. Just depends on how you like. And you're going to put it on the same way. It's just going to be depending on how you want to finish it. So if you're hand stitching it down, you'll hand stitch on the back. And if you are machine stitching down, you're going to stitch on the front. So we're going to put our binding, I'm going to put my binding on the back. Okay, because I'm going to hand stitch. So now I'm going to use, I went back to my Pima cotton thread, and I went back to Q02 for because I need my 1/4 inch seam to put my binding on. Now, I learned to put this binding on with a little thing called Bind Aid, and I do have this linked in the video description, so if you need some help putting binding on. But I'm going to put my raw edges together. I have it folded in half. This is 2 1/4 inch binding. We're going to start kind of over here on bottom, and I'm going to leave a little tail. I want to leave a tail so that we have something to work with, and then I'm going to kind of go down here and start working my way around the little quilt. And I'm putting this on the back because I'm going to machine stitch this down. So I'm going to go ahead and tie off. I'm going to move my camera down just a little bit more out of my way here. Hopefully I'm not making everybody sick. My camera's been a little finicky today. All right. Then we're going to go up here and we'll stop about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of our little quilt to make the corner. Okay, I'm going to tie off there. And I'm going to cut. Then I'm going to turn. Then we're going to make a beautiful 45-degree angle with our binding. And then we're going to come straight down. All the even edge, or all the raw edges will be together then. So I'm going to come down the side here. Get it all lined up. And then we'll sew down this side. And I had never done binding. And my friend gave me this little piece of paper that showed you how to make binding. And I did very well with it, and that's the way I've always done my binding, and I've never had any trouble. And I just changed from having it hand stitching it down on the back to stitching the binding on the back, flipping it to the front, and doing machine stitching. So it depends on what you like better. If you like to hand stitch, go ahead and just do hand stitching. That's whatever is what you like. I have always liked to do everything with the sewing machine, and I'm not a very good hand stitcher, so I like to have it done on the machine. So we're going to stop about 1/4 of an inch from the end, tie off, cut, and then we're going to turn and make our corner. So we're going to flip it back. Okay, make sure that's underneath there. Flip it back, get our nice 45-degree angle here. And then this is the raw edge, and these are the raw edges. So we're going to have all of our raw edges are together. Bring it straight down, line it all up. Okay, and then we'll do this side. Be a little careful. This is going to be a little bulkier because this is where the little sleeve is. But when I saw these, I thought, oh gosh, these would be so cute with a sleeve on it. But I hadn't made one for a long time. So I had to go look up my instructions that I wrote down about how to do the sleeve. So I like the sleeves. I think they look really nice on the back. They fit in the frame nicely. They also work well if you're using the little hangers, because I'll link those too. There's some little hangers that are 12 inches that Ackfeld makes my little metal frame. Plus they also make these little hangers, and those work really nicely too. But you can hang it on the wall then. Depends on what you want to do. I had a nice place in my living room to put the little frame. So, all right, so we're just about there. I'm going to stop 1/4 of an inch, so I kind of mark it with my fingers so I know where I'm at. Using Q02 though for my 1/4 inch piecing seam, 1/4 inch seam. Okay, good, and I'll tie off there, and we're going to go around another corner. All right, let's get around this corner. I like to leave the binding on, the video on while I'm doing the binding, if that's okay, because I think people struggle a little bit with binding, and it doesn't hurt to watch it again. I know it's helped me a lot to watch people do binding, so I've learned a lot about binding by just watching people do it. And I do it maybe a little differently than some people do, because I figured out this little method that works for me for the sewing it on the front. Because I do a lot of samples and stuff, and it is way easier to do it with the sewing machine. But you want it to look nice, so it is a little bit of a practice, I'll tell you. You do have to spend some time practicing doing it this way, and you may find that it's a little hard at first, but once you get going with it, it's not too bad. All right, so we're going to go down here about 1/4 of an inch from the end, and then we'll stop, tie off, and then we'll do our last corner. So now when we get to our last corner, we're going to not go around the corner too far because I need a little bit of space to work with when I get around the corner here. So I'm going to kind of go around the corner, but I'm not going to sew too far. Whoops, I'm stuck here. And like that. Oops, let me get my thread underneath my foot. Make sure you get your threads underneath your foot because then you don't unthread your machine so easily. It's still a long thread, but not like it does if it's laying on top. And drop your needle. That helps a lot. Okay, so we're not going to go across, we're not going to go over the side too far here. So we have a little room to work. These little quilts are kind of stiff, so they're a little hard to get turned when I'm working with the last little bit here. So this is the tricky bit that I've always had. You're going to have to give me a second here. I got to grab my other scissors. I must have left them over here. And my pen, there it is. I look for my scissors most of my life. Okay, so now this is where we need to connect this together to make it continuous binding. So what I do is I take the end that we ended with. This is this end where we just ended over here. I'm going to kind of lay it flat like that. And then I'm going to put this piece, which is the piece we started with, on the top. And I'm going to lay it together. And then I'm going to grab my little hem gauge here. Hopefully I can find it. Here it is. Well, this was Grandma's. This will work. Grandma's was a little harder to see because hers doesn't have the lines on it, as many lines on it. You find mine. Here it is. And I'm going to mark this at, since my binding is 2 1/4 inches, you need to put, I just put it on the 2 1/4 inch mark. If you have 2 1/2 inch binding, you put it on the 2 1/2. So it depends on which kind of binding you do. So I got 2 1/4. I'm going to put it right up to the end, and then I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to put it in the back piece, 2 1/4 inches from that front piece that's cut off right there. You can see the edge of it. Okay, so we're going to make sure that that's right. Put the pin in there, and I'm just going to measure one more time, make sure it's correct. So I always measure a couple times before I start cutting. All right, so that looks pretty good. 2 1/4. Okay, so now we've got our pin right here. So now I can cut this off where the pin is. So this is 2 1/4. So they're going to overlap 2 1/4 inches. Get this out of the way. Oops, here's my scissors. And trim that off. Okay, so that's the first step. And then we're going to turn the left hand, the one over here, we're going to turn it down at a 45-degree angle like this. Okay? And then this one, we're going to open it up. So here's the wrong side, and I'm going to open it up and lay it with the wrong side down like this. Okay? Then I'm going to take this piece over here. That's where we started. I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to kind of open it up as I go. So I'm kind of opening it up here. Here's the inside. Okay, the wrong side there. And I'm just going to keep going in the same direction. I'm going to turn it in the same direction, just like this. And it's going to kind of open up. Okay. And I'm going to line up my corners. So you can see that the folds are going to be intersecting each other. So like the fold for this is going this way, the fold for this is going this way. So then you know you've got it right. Okay, so then I'm going to take my pins. I lost one. Oh, there it is. I had my machine serviced recently, and Ron said, I was having a little trouble with my embroidery unit. It'd make a little funny noise every now and then. I couldn't figure out why. And he said, well, there was a pin in it. I had a pin evidently down in my embroidery unit near the gear or something. There's like a gear area in there. And he said there was a pin in there, and every now and then it would bounce up and touch it. And he said that probably made the noise. And so he took the pin out and he said, oh yeah, he said it should be fine now. So I was like, oh good. I was hoping I didn't need something done with my embroidery unit. I don't get pins in them as badly as I used to because the Luminaire doesn't have a split on the top, The splits are down on the sides, so I don't get near as many pins in my embroidery unit as I used to, because I sew with pins and they're always flopping all over the place. All right, so we're going to pin this. All right, so then what I do is I take my pen and I like to mark where the corners are so I know exactly. This one's a little hard to see. This one's, underneath. So I'm going to take my pen. This one I can usually see, but we're just going to mark it anyway. And you can draw all the way across here with the mark if you want. I normally can eyeball it, so I just at least mark the edges. And I'm going to go back to Q01, which is my straight stitch with the needle in the center. So I just move the needle back over to the center. We're going to kind of fold this. So this is where this gets kind of tricky because it's a little stiff. So we want this binding to lay nice and flat. So this is the tricky part, is to do this little seam. So I'm trying to get everything nice and flat. That's why you want to leave a little gap there that's big enough so you can kind of get it flattened out. So I'm going to take a stitch or two in here. There we go. Okay, so let's make sure everything's good and flat. Get this laid flat. This is always the hardest part, is getting it flat enough to do this seam. Okay, I think we're good. So let's see here. So I'm aiming for this other side over here. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, take these pins out. See how we did. So if we lay it back this way, then you know if you got it right if it lays flat like that. So I don't ever trim anything out until I know I'm laying flat. Now it looks pretty good. So now we can take this big bulky piece out of here. Just trim it about 1/4 inch from the seam. And then I just finger press this open so that it'll lay nice and flat. So we'll, whoops, see if I can get a hold of it here. There we go. Lay this flat. Like that. And then lay it flat. And then I like to put a few pins in this just to make sure everything stays put for me. So we'll put a couple pins down here, and then we'll finish our stitching for our binding, and then we'll have one piece of binding. So binding is I remember the first couple times I did it, I really had to look at the pictures on Bind Aid. I spent a lot of time studying the pictures, and there's some good pictures on it. It's just one piece of paper, maybe two. It might be two, like front and the back, but it was really helpful, and it tells you how to do 2 1/4 inch binding and 2 1/2 inch binding. And I usually use 2 1/4. Okay. So there's our pins, and then we're going to go back to Q02. We need to move our needle back over to the 1/4 inch seam stitch, and then we're going to just finish trimming or stitching this little bit of binding on. I did better this time. I managed to not get the seam of the two pieces of binding in the corner. I always seem to get one in a corner. It's Murphy's Law, I think. All right. Get this in there. Just about there. One more little bit, and then we'll be ready to do the stitching on the outside. And we have to put there's little pom-poms that go on this one too. So we have to put those on. We're going to glue those on with the glue gun, I think. Oh my goodness, I had ravelly thread. Okay. There we go. So here is our binding on the back. Looks like I got a long string. All right, so then what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take this over to my, so the trick with doing binding with the sewing machine is that you need to have a very crisp press along the back here, because you want this very crisp. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take this over to my iron. Now remember, you've got vinyl on here, so be very careful. I'm going to take this over and I'm going to get a very crisp seam all the way around, and my binding is going to be sticking out like this when I'm done, but very crisp seam along here. Okay, and then we will do the we'll go ahead and put the binding on the front. I'll be right back after I do some pressing. Okay, so I've got this all pressed out nice and with a real crisp seam on the back. And then we need to make our beautiful corners, and I've done a couple of them already. So what I do to make my corners is I bring this forward. I'm just going to take a couple of clover clips and put one like on either side of the corner. And that's really the only clips that I put on, even if I'm doing a great big quilt. I just put like 8 clips on the whole thing. But then this helps me just to kind of hold this, and I've got my pin right here. And I'm going to run the fold of my binding right up along the edge of the stitches that we, put it on with, the seam that we put it on with. Right along there, I'm going to put my fingernail up into the corner, making a nice 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to pull this other corner down to the line on the other side of the corner, and then I'm going to hold it together with my thumb, and I'm going to stick that pin right in there and out the corner, and then that holds it together, and we're going to leave that in there like that. So I push up this way on the right hand side, and then bring the left hand side down to it. And I've done that all the way around my quilt. And I just have a few little clips in. And even when I do great big quilts, I only put like 8 clips in. I don't clip all the way around. So, and I've also gone and switched back to my monofilament thread. I just didn't have any thread that was close enough to this particular binding. And you don't want the stitching to show. So if you have very, very matchy thread, it works just perfect. But I didn't, so otherwise I use monofilament. So I've gone back to that. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to use a zigzag. So I'm going to go back to my number 1 tab, which is your kind of basic utility stitches, and I'm going to use 1-10, which I have set up for my binding zigzag. And I have it set up so that it is 1.4 millimeters long, and the width is 2.0. So it's pretty narrow, and it's not too long this way. Okay, so that's what I use for my binding. Make sure you can see here. And then what I do is I'm just going to let's just start here at the bottom. That'll be fine. Okay, and what I do is I hold my binding right up to the stitching line that we stitched it on. So that's that line right there. I hold the fold of my binding right up to that, and I'm going to use that little notch in the middle of my foot again, like I use a lot. And I'm going to put that notch right on the edge of my binding. So the right hand part of the zigzag is going to be on the binding, and the left is going to be off the binding. So I'm going to drop my needle. It's on the right hand side right now. I'm going to tie this off. Got this long thread here, so let's see if I can get some of that out of there. Get it out of our way. There we go. And I'm going to be, the right hand zig is going to be on the binding, and the left hand zag is going to be off the binding. Okay, so we're just going to, oops, second here, I'm stuck on my clover clip. I don't take my embroidery unit off much when I sew, so this particular little mini quilt is just the wrong size. It catches on the embroidery unit a little bit, so I have to be careful. So I'm just holding it, and I can take my clip off. So when I get to the corner, I'm going to hold this out a little bit so I can see and keep it straight. So remember, the left zag is off the binding, and the zig on the right is on it. Okay, and I'm going to go into the corner. I'm going to leave that pin in there, because if you take it out, it will never be beautiful. We want it to be beautiful, so I'm going to zigzag in there, and then I'm going to turn. So now I way overshot it because my little notch is way over here to the right. So I'm going to raise my needle. I'm going to slide back over to the edge of my binding, and then drop my needle again so that I know that I'm going to come out of the corner right on the edge. So I'm going to take this clip off, make sure that my binding is nice and straight, and I'm going to come out of that corner. So if you need to adjust, don't be afraid to pick up your needle and get your little notch back onto the edge of your binding. And I'm going to do this all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and continue zigzagging here. You don't need to watch me zigzag all the way around this. And I'll come on when I'm ready to do the last corner over here and the end so you can see me finish it. But I'm just going to be zigzagging. And remember, the left hand zag is off the binding and the right hand zig is on the binding. And that's the way you put the binding on. This takes a lot of practice. It's taken me a long time to get better at it. I'm better at it now. My corners sometimes aren't perfect. So the corners are the hardest. And so, but I'm just going to keep on going, and I will be back in a moment when we get ready to do that last corner so you can see another corner. Okay, so I'm ready for the last corner here. I'm going to leave that pin in there. I'm going to kind of pull down with my fingernail so that I can see my line and keep my binding nice and straight. And we're going to sew down into this corner. And then I'm going to go right into the corner, take a couple stitches, and then I'm going to flip around. And let's see. Oh, I got pretty good on that one. I didn't have to alter my... So I got that one. I get better as I go along with the corners. The corners are the toughest. So once you get the hang of the corners. So I think I'm pretty good. So I think I can come right out of that corner. I'm holding my binding down. Okay, and then we're going to make sure, and I'm stopping right here. I had to pin it because it's a little hard to see, you know, where it starts and stops with that monofilament. So we're just about to the end. All right, we're getting close here. I gotta, oops, get that little tail out of the way so we won't sew it into the binding here. And then the trick is at the end, try not to go over your zigzag too much, just maybe just a stitch, because it does show if you zigzag over too much, because sometimes the zigzags don't like line up perfectly. So try to just go right up to where you stopped. I'm going to tie off and cut. And we're all the way around. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so cute. All right, so I'm going to trim this. We'll take all these pins out so I won't stab myself. And look at there's the binding. And so I've got a couple of things to do before I come back, and we'll put it up in the frame so you can see it, and we need to put our pom-poms on too. So I'm going to show you what I have to go do. I'm going to turn the camera off for a minute. So here's my little sleeve. I'm going to take these pins out of here too, and then I'm going to go peel the paper off the back of the heat and bond, and then I'm going to bond this down. The other thing I like to do is, I found that since this is kind of thick right in here, it didn't like to bond very well. So I bond this part, and then I take a needle and thread and just put a stitch at the corner here and the corner here just to hold it nice and snug. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll come back and put the little pom-poms on. Okay, so I started gluing some of these little pom-poms. They're really tiny. And I was just looking at the picture here on page 15. So I'm kind of sticking them on by what the picture says. So I did a few of them because there's like 11 of them. So I didn't figure you needed to sit here and watch me struggle with all these little pom-poms. So like here's one. Whoops, I just about stuck it somewhere where I didn't want it. It goes in here, so if I got it turned sideways. There we go. Got some glue in there, but we can get that out once it cures here. And this could be also done with like fabric glue. Maybe fabric glue would be a little easier, I'm not sure. So we're going to put up one there, and then I think it has like one kind of in here, kind of one in there. I wonder if I lost one. Feels like I might have lost one. let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. No, I think I got them all. Okay. So I think there looks like there's one, there was kind of one down here, then maybe one in here, and then one over kind of here. Okay. So let's put a couple more on here. So these are cute, but they're a little hard to hang on to. They're small. Little pom-poms, little pink, kind of mauve-y pom-poms. So, and I think the last one kind of goes in the middle here, so we'll put a little bit of glue on this one. But just kind of look at the picture, that's what I did, and then they just kind of all kind of slipped in there, so like that. There we go. There's our little pom-pom flowers, and you can kind of move your little, looks like I got a little bit of glue on my flower, but I think it's okay. It'll be all right once I get it, once I let it cure. Oh my gosh, isn't that cute? Look at the little flowers. Very cute. With the pom-poms, I like that. So there is our little mini quilt. So give me a minute, I'll turn the camera off for a second while I put this in the frame, and then you can see it all in the frame and all finished. Yep, there's 11 of those little pom-poms, so don't drop them. I had a couple of them ended up on the floor, so I think I got them. But yeah, isn't that cute? Look at there, the whole thing's done. So I'll put it up in the frame so you can see the whole thing with the binding and all the little decorations. Okay, so there it is. There's our little May mini quilt. Isn't that adorable? I really like the little flowers. I love fringe. And this was fun to do that with the water-soluble thread so that it really helped make him beautiful and like all the loopy, very loopy along there. So isn't that cute? So there's the May Kimberbell Mini Quilt. Thank you so much for joining me on this little journey for our mini quilts each month. And we'll do the June one probably around the 1st of May. So in about a month, we'll do the June one. And then the new batch for the July through December is supposed to be coming out, I think, sometime in May. So I haven't heard for sure. I haven't gotten them yet. So they should be coming soon. But thank you so much for joining me for the May mini quilt. And if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would really appreciate it. It helps you get notifications so you know when I have new videos and so on. And also, if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. So thank you, everybody, and we will be seeing you soon for the June mini quilt from Kimberbell. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.